Joining us now is Lee Gelernt, one of the lead attorneys fighting Trump's deportations. He's also deputy director of the Immigrants' Rights Project at the ACLU. Lee, I know you're not directly involved in Mohsen's case, but I wanted to get your reaction to his release today. And, you know, there are other students still being detained or threatened with detention. Does this move the needle in any of those other cases?
Well, hopefully it does. You know, this is an important principle that we're fighting for, which is that people should not be punished for their speech, for nonviolent speech. And so people are being detained and they're being whisked away to Louisiana and other places. So I think this is an important step forward of the judge releasing someone who's not dangerous, who's being punished solely for his speech. So we'll see how it plays out in other courts, but we think this does move the needle forward.
I also want to ask you, I want to switch gears to Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, the man who was mistakenly deported from Maryland to El Salvador. The president told ABC News last night that he could bring him back to the U.S., but suggested he's not going to do it. That could be important, right? Because that contradicts previous claims by the administration that they have no power over what El Salvador does. Do you expect that statement to come up in court and possibly help Abrego Garcia's case and other individuals who have been deported in a similar manner?
Yeah, I think you're right to ask about that. I think we've always known that the United States could get people out of that prison. I mean, we're the ones sending them to that prison and we're the ones paying for it. And the Salvadoran government is doing it at our behest. So the president acknowledging it, I think, is important. But, you know, it's something we've always known, and I suspect it will play a role in court. I mean, the Supreme Court has already said the United States government needs to facilitate his return. Now, there's no question, I think, in anybody's mind that they can facilitate the return if they want to, and hopefully the courts put their foot down and say that needs to happen. And as you pointed out, it's not just Abrego Garcia. We have hundreds of Venezuelan men who were illegally removed under the Alien Enemies Act, the wartime authority that's only been used during war, and now the Trump administration is trying to do it during peacetime. They're Venezuelan men who have been alleged to be gang members, had no due process, and now sitting in this brutal Salvadoran prison. We're going to try and get them back as well. And we think there's no question the administration can facilitate their return, as President Trump apparently acknowledged. I didn't see the statement, but apparently he's acknowledging that he could get them out.
And in a related issue, a judge today denied the government's request to pause the discovery stage in the Abrego Garcia case. A lot of what lawyers are asking for in that case has direct connection to the ACLU's case involving the Aliens Enemies Act. The things they're asking for are the things we've been asking. How are they choosing these individuals? They're asking for the contract with El Salvador. What does that look like? What is the agreement? What is the most important insight you think you could gain from some of this discovery that starting on Friday, the judge says has to be turned in?
Yeah, so I think you're right to point out what exactly is our agreement with El Salvador. We've always said that this is essentially a U.S. prison in El Salvador, that we're sending the people there, we're choosing who goes there, and we're paying for it. You know, the Abrego Garcia thing is a one-off in some respects because the government's admitted it was an administrative mistake. But the Venezuelan men we know are being sent there under the Alien Enemies Act, and we're challenging that. We know they didn't get due process. We also think that it's a wartime authority that can't be used during peacetime. So more about how they're choosing to send people to El Salvador is critical. But we already know from the evidence that's emerging that people were not actually gang members who were sent there, and they're using a sloppy process of just assuming that because people have certain tattoos that they're members of the gang. And more evidence is emerging that they're not actually gang members or strongly disputed. And that's why there needs to be due process. And I think that's why you see people on both sides of the aisle coming out and saying there has to be due process. Otherwise, they can pick anybody up and send them to El Salvador. And those people could spend the rest of their lives there.
And I want to play you, on that note, I want to play you the sound from the president last night when he was asked about this and essentially said due process for migrants is going to take too long. Have a listen.
If you're going to have 21 million people, and if we have to get a lot of them out because they're criminals, we're going to have to act fast. We can't. Do you think we can give 21 million trials? Let's say each trial takes 2 weeks. Is that what you want us to do?
The law
give
is the law,
million?
sir. The law is the law, and you're
the law
sworn
doesn't
to
say anything
uphold it.
about trials.
No, not trials, hearings.
Lee, do you have a response for the president?
So I think the reporter there was absolutely right that these are not full-blown trials like jury trials, but putting that aside, I mean, due process is not a luxury. It's the very foundation of the a system based on the rule of law. It's been absolutely essential in our country. And without it, anybody could end up in that Salvadoran prison. It has to be the case that people get due process. And I think that's why you're seeing people from all different vantage points, conservative, liberal, just saying, look, we can't just pick people up off the street and send them. So that's why the Constitution says due process for all persons. It didn't say all due process just for citizens. I mean, interestingly, this Constitution points out certain provisions that only apply to citizens. You have to be a citizen to be the president. But with respect to due process, the framers said all persons, and that's been critical throughout our 200 plus years in the country. We can't abandon it.
All right, Lee Gelernt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.